Hello, Battletech enthusiasts. I have a puzzle for you today. You're going to be sent down to the field and you must pick between a Locust, a Demolisher, and an LRM Carrier. And you're going to be going up against one of these other two. Which do you pick? Well, you could go for the Locust. Pretty much a throwaway mech. And it's also, to every other pilot in the inner sphere, it's basically known as a mech that can only stomp rats, which is basically the nickname for infantry, and it's basically useless against any other mech. And if you look at it, it is pretty weak. It's got one saving grace, and then it's very fast. But other than that, it's lightly armored, and at least the Wasp and the Stinger can have jump jets and can jump, and the Locust can pretty much only run fast. I mean, there are variants like the 1S, etc., but that's it. The next option, the LRM Carrier. This is a premier damage support vehicle. It's a little slow, and it's kind of thinly armored, but it has extreme damage capability, and mechs fear this vehicle. It's got 3 LRM 20s that can just rain down hellfire on anything out there as long as it has line of sight or indirect fire with assistance from some other friendly vehicle or infantry that can give you line of sight, indirect line of sight. So it's known as just very heavy firepower, and you want to keep things at a distance. Don't let them get up close. But otherwise, if you can keep things at a distance, you can pretty much destroy anything in the game, just given with your missiles. Okay, the third choice, this is very scary Demolisher. This is like the most frightening tank in the game. It's designed to not fear any mech. Like an Atlas will fear a Demolisher because its twin AC-20s can pretty much kill anything. It's got extremely heavy firepower with those twin AC-20s and extremely heavy armor, so it can take 4 PPC hits or 2 AC-20 hits in direct hits in the front, for example. So it's pretty much nearly invulnerable and extremely high firepower, except that it's just very slow moving. But other than that, it's just very tough, very, very scary tank. It's basically the epitome of a frightening tank. Okay, so what should you pick? Here goes Demolisher versus Locust. This is pretty obvious what's going to happen. It's basically, do you even have to go through this? But here we will go and we'll analyze it. So we're going to assume that we started maximum range for the longest range weapon possible. It's the first turn. And now turn 2, the Locust needs to get up close, so it runs at maximum speed. So at least it can get some kicks in or something. And then after that, I'm going to assume every once in a while one of the two wins initiative and goes back and forth. And I'm only going to allow one-dimensional axis front-facing at all times. So I'm going to just alternate positions here. So the mean lifetime of Locust, if you do this many times, is about 2 turns. Basically, one of the AC-20s will eventually connect, and there you go. The Demolisher wins. The Demolisher takes very light damage in the meanwhile. It takes about 18 turns for the Locust to wear down the Demolisher, whereas it only takes 2 turns for the Demolisher to destroy a typical Locust. So that's basically the end of that. Okay, so now next, let's check out Demolisher versus the LRM Carrier. This is a lot more complicated, because the LRM Carrier, we're going to start them off at the maximum range of the longest weapon, which is the LRM Carrier's LRMs. The AC-20s have a much shorter range. So now here we go. Now, the LRM Carrier starts sending off volleys. Now, the Demolisher needs to close at the maximum speed, which is speed 5. And the LRM Carrier is going to retreat at speed 3. So the net speed difference is 2. And there's going to be some penalties for movement that go on. That makes things harder to hit. But nevertheless, the LRM Carrier is going to continue shooting 3 LRM 20s a turn at the Demolisher, hoping to get a hit. Now, if there is a hit, an interesting feature is that the clusters from the LRMs will hit various parts of the tank, and there's a very high chance of a motive hit. And a motive hit, even on a tracked vehicle, if you roll 2d6. If you roll 2 to 5, nothing happens. If you roll higher than that, basically there's a loss of speed, which means also you'll lose flanking speed. And since the Demolisher is only a 3-5, it'll be a 2-3 all of a sudden, which means it can no longer catch up. So if any motive hit occurs, then the Demolisher is doomed, because it cannot catch up to the retreating LRM Carrier, and then any further that's even with the weakest hit. So if the Demolisher manages to make it to the LRM Carrier, yes, the Demolisher will destroy the LRM Carrier quickly, but it never makes it, because the probability of getting a motive hit with all those LRM shots is just too high. So basically the LRM Carrier mobility kills the Demolisher and then just peppers it to death, and that's it. So LRM Carrier wins against the Demolisher. So that was interesting. So now let's look again at the Locust versus the LRM Carrier. What could possibly happen? This is the Rat Stomper against this machine that just destroyed the Demolisher. So let's start off again at maximum range with the longest weapon, which is the LRM Carrier. It gets its first shot. Then the next turn, the Locust is going to run as fast as it can to get up to the LRM Carrier. Now, when you move 12 hexes in a turn, and the LRM Carrier is going to run backwards or walk backwards at that's maximum speed as fast as possible to try to avoid the Locust. And when you move so many hexes, the 2-hit probability is so low that you basically have to roll 11s or 12s to hit with the LRM Carrier. And because the Locust moves so fast, it catches up to the LRM Carrier in just 2 turns, as you can see here. And at this point, the LRM Carrier is no longer able to hit the Locust. And so the vast majority of the time, the Locust makes it to the LRM Carrier, at which point the Locust tears up the LRM Carrier, and it's pretty much good game. Now, it turns out that there's a reasonable chance that some missiles will actually hit the Locust, but not enough, because a LRM-20 will typically only hit with 12 missiles, and these will be grouped into 2 groups of 5, 1 group of 2. So you may destroy an arm or damage an arm and take out the machine gun with a critical hit or something, but the center torso has 10 points of armor, and you're not going to kill the Locust with LRM-20s very easily unless you get very lucky, until the Locust has actually made it to you. At that point, your penalties for hitting with the LRM Carrier are so high. And also, in reality, the Locust, in a real battle, and instead of this fake one-axis featureless map, infinite scrolling map, a real map would have buildings and hills and other terrain features the Locust can hide behind, and the LRM Carrier would have to rely on indirect fire. So the Locust almost always will win this battle, and the LRM Carrier doesn't have a chance. So that's interesting. So that is one of the cool things about Battletech. There is no ultimate solution. Even with this simple infinite scrolling map, you can't pick a best machine among 3 that I just picked out. The Demolisher, the Locust, or the LRM Carrier, none of them is the ultimate machine. For each machine, you can pick another machine that will beat it, and yet another machine that will almost always lose to it. But here, the Locust was the ultimate victor. But overall, because the Locust is so cheap, its battle value is half that of the Demolisher or the LRM Carrier, I would call the Locust the ultimate winner of this game.